Let me recognize the problem so it can be solved. I'm Alison Anton. You're listening to the ForgiveNest Podcast for A Course in Miracles, your place to explore ACIM topics in healing, meditation, and your special function in forgiveness. Healing through forgiveness really is what we're doing here in the Christ healings I'll be talking about today. It might not seem on the outside that forgiveness is what we need to give to ultimately release ourselves from pain. But from the framework of A Course in Miracles, it always is. And that's why I opened this announcement of my healing circles with the workbook lesson, Let me recognize the problem so it can be solved. Because 99.9% of the time, we as humans don't actually recognize what the problem of illness is in the first place or where that problem originates. The Course is saying here that we have to recognize the problem first so that the real healing can take place. So I'm going to use this episode to both introduce my Christ Healing group sessions, and as I do that, you'll also get an idea of what A Course in Miracles says about healing and what it doesn't say. And I'm going to start with that actually, because right out of the gate, I want to knock some false ideas off the table about what A Course in Miracles says on illness. Yes, you'll hear me talk today about how the Course says the cause of illness is in our mind and not the body. And you'll also hear me say that the Course says the only way to ultimately cure disease is by healing it at the source, in the mind. But it's very clear Jesus is quite aware that our belief in the body, and hence our belief in illness, is very, very real to us. There would absolutely be no need for a 500,000-word course on how to correct a single error in our mind if he thought we were ready to just accept his word on it and do it. If that were the case, all he'd need to have written was a single paragraph, or maybe even a single sentence. So it's clear that changing our minds about ourselves in the way the Course presents to us is a process. And I would say this presumably is a multi-lifetime pursuit. Jesus has total faith in us that we will reach that goal. But let's remember that we ourselves decide the timing, the when of it. He states this in the introduction and then again in the manual for teachers. So I feel the need to bring this up first because we all have at some point that question come up of, well, if Jesus himself says sickness is in my mind, and if all I need to do is decide not to be sick, is he asking us not to use doctors or medicines? The answer is no, he's not. There's nowhere in the Course that says to abstain from medicines and remedies we need right now. And that's simply because we're not ready to see the entire construct of form and body as an illusion yet. So trying to force a square peg in a round hole right now, when we really don't understand the enormity of that round hole yet, is a form of denial, as he states early on in the Course. The body is merely a fact in this world. Its abilities can be, and frequently are, over-evaluated. However, it is almost impossible to deny its existence in this world. Those who do are engaging in a particularly unworthy form of denial. So we're in a process of getting to that higher ground Jesus is helping us get to. But along the way, our bodies undeniably do feel pain and we do get sick. So for that, we need symptom alleviation, medical treatment, surgeries, or whatever natural remedies and body-mind healing modalities we want to use. When I was healing from a multi-year-long bout of Lyme disease, my personal experience was that Jesus was right there, helping connect me to the doctors and remedies my mind needed to help me feel safe and on track. So, an important thing to remember is that whatever situations present to us, Jesus and the Holy Spirit will repurpose these and help us learn to see them as processes of learning. If you align with them in your healing process, they'll lead you where you need to go. And let's always remember that we're healing an ancient error. And our minds are too stuck on this deep-seated illusion to abstain from doctors, surgeons, antibiotics, or body-mind healing modalities right now. Jesus calls these special agents. Here's one passage where he mentions these. When time is abolished and all the sons of God have come home, no special agents will be necessary. But do not underestimate the power of special agents now, or the great need there is for them. I do not claim to be more than that myself. Okay, enough said on this, but again, I wanted to start out this way so you really know that it's not just an afterthought or a caveat. All right, before we get into what the Course says on healing, I'll give you a bit on my own background as a healer. I started in my mid-20s with clairvoyant healing and meditation training through the Berkeley Psychic Institute in California, and continued that training for at least a decade with several of their core teachers. Around that time as well, I became an ordained non-denominational minister. From there, I co-directed a women's healing center in Colorado, and ultimately ended up focusing on medical and health-related readings and healings due to my own process of healing Lyme disease, like I mentioned. I also had an extensive training in functional nutrition and cooking and also body work. I did many readings and healings of a medical/body nature, and even designed the curriculum for a medical intuition program for graduates of clairvoyant programs. I then took a decade-long break from professional healing work, but here I am coming full circle to focus on the aspects of healing and forgiveness from the teachings of A Course in Miracles, which I've been a student of since 1996. I'm now part of the healing ministry for the Circle of Atonement, which is the publisher of the complete and annotated edition of A Course in Miracles. That's based off of Helen Schuckman's original notes. I'll give you a link to the circle near the end. Okay, so let's move on from the housekeeping and talk about who my Christ healing sessions are for. The focus is on people who are working through an illness. It doesn't have to be a diagnosable one. Really, any physical, mental, or emotional pain or discomfort. But you even may ask, does it count if my pain is existential? And I'd have to answer absolutely, because A Course in Miracles paints a way bigger picture of what sickness actually is than an illness of the body. And this is the perfect segue into what is a Christ healing. Other titles for these are course-based healings or miracle-minded healings. I still use the term Christ healing because that's what I called them many years ago when I did these sessions one-on-one and in groups. And Christ healing really is what it is. Here's why. The healing happens in the mind as a transference of thought from the mind of Christ in the healer to the mind of Christ in the receiver. And Christ here is another word for the Son of God, which we all are, according to ACIM. Christ healing sessions follow the Course tenet that all sickness originates in the mind. And the sickness we're talking about here stems from a thought of separation. This is a deep thought in the mind in which we chose to think of ourselves as split off from God. This is a thought so powerful, it not only moved mountains, it made mountains. And what I mean by that is that this is the thought system that eventually led to form and to bodies and a separate you and me. A Course in Miracles calls this the separation, which led us into a false but seemingly very real to us perception of form. And within this form is housed a deep sense of sin, of guilt, and isolation, because the separation also cut us off from the entire sonship of God. And when we see each other only as bodies, we're really blocked from seeing who we really are. And we're rightfully deeply lonely on that existential level. So this is why the Course says sickness doesn't originate in the body or even in the brain of the body. The body is merely a reflection of the pain that arose from cutting off ourselves. Jesus, in the psychotherapy supplement to A Course in Miracles, says, "Who except a patient could possibly have come here?" He's saying that every body is in the same position here, whether we have a diagnosed illness or not. Everyone who comes into a body and into this form-based world is a patient, meaning we all have a deep-seated thought system in the mind that needs healed. This is why it's so important not to feel lesser than if we're struggling with an illness, or to see others that way if they're sick. We're all really in the same boat here. That said, the Course does say that when we align our will toward true healing of the mind, the body can be healed of illness, and we give the body a new purpose too. The purpose of extending love and helping others on the journey home. So how does Christ healing work, and who does this healing? Firstly, the receiver ultimately is the one who heals herself. It's a decision she makes in her mind at her own timing. But to open this space for healing, the healer is guided by the Holy Spirit to look beyond the body toward the Christ within. The healer looks beyond the cloud of perceived sin and guilt to the part of the mind that was never sick or separated in the first place. This is where that forgiveness aspect comes in. There's a deeply needed communication that's being restored between us. Simply allowing the Holy Spirit to connect the giver and receiver in a holy instant where we recognize each other as we truly are is a forgiving gesture that heals both of us. With Jesus and the Holy Spirit's guidance, the healer looks beyond perceived guilt and judgment. It's a transfer of desperately needed forgiveness from one Son of God to another. Jesus says this about what unforgiveness is, and then follows with what giving forgiveness can do. Both passages are from the healing section of the Songs of Prayer supplement of A Course in Miracles. He starts with, "The body's cause is unforgiveness of the Son of God. It has not left its source, and in its pain and aging and the mark of death upon it, this is clearly shown." He's saying the body was made by unforgiveness and is still the reflection of that original idea. Our bodies clearly show this by pain and aging and death itself. But then he goes on to say, the body can be healed as an effect of true forgiveness. Only that can give remembrance of immortality, which is the gift of holiness and love. Forgiveness must be given by a mind which understands that it must overlook all shadows on the holy face of Christ, among which sickness should be seen as one. So the healer's role is in overlooking all shadows to the face of Christ beyond those shadows. These are beautiful sessions and are just one way to practice forgiveness in a healing setting and learn to align our minds with each other for true healing. I want to end with a prayer, as we usually do, but firstly, for dates and times and how to get onto the Christ Healing Calls, see this post's Substack page for details and updates. And if you're watching this on YouTube or listening on another podcast host, you'll need to jump over to my Substack page to get the call-in info. AlisonAnton.substack.com. And if you want to put yourself or a loved one in for a prayer or healing request with the Circle of Atonement's healing ministry, go to circleofa.org. So let's end this episode with a loving intention to see our brothers as they are as God created them. This is from Workbook Lesson 274. You can close your eyes if you like. Father, today I would let all things be as you created them and give your sons the honor due their sinlessness, the love of brother to his brother and his friend. Through this, I am redeemed. Through this, as well the truth will enter where illusions were, light will replace all darkness, and your son will know he is as you created him. And I'll leave you with that to ponder. Thank you for listening to the ForgiveNest Podcast. I'm Alison Anton. It was great talking to you.